Hello and welcome back. Today is Friday, January 31st, 2025, and we are reading Chapter 29 and the Epilogue of Abhorsen by Garth Nix today. Today we're going to finish this book. And I've tried to make this video like 10 times already today. And something keeps happening and I have to turn the video off. And I don't want this to be a big choppy video. I don't want it to just be all willy-nilly. I want to have a good, cohesive last video. Because I know I'm going to lose it halfway through this chapter. I've tried to read this chapter on my own, I'll just say several times now. And I can't get through it without crying. So, I don't know what to do. I guess I'll just say thank you so much to everyone who has been following along. Thank you to all the subscribers. Thank you to everyone who has liked these videos and left me comments and said wonderful, kind things. You have no idea how much it has meant to me. And I'm so excited to be finishing this chapter of this book and this chapter of my journey on YouTube. I'm really excited for what's to come. I'm really excited about putting out some new videos, going in a different direction. But this has been really hard today. And as always, I'm going to try my best. But this is totally different. Yeah. I guess I'm going to get a drink of water and compose myself and do my very best to get through this chapter. Yeah. That's all I can do. Oh, man. Okay. Okay. Here I go. Here we go. Okay. Here we go. Chapter 29. The Choice of Yrael. So Hedge has failed me, as such servants do, said Uranus, his voice low like a whisper, but harsh and penetrating, as all living things must fail, till silence rings me an eternal calm across a sea of dust. And now another 7 comes, all a clamor, to lock Uranus once more in metal, deep under earth. But can a 7 of such watered blood and thinner power prevail against the destroyer, last and mightiest of the 9? Uranus paused for a moment of terrible, absolute silence. Then it spoke 3 words that shook everyone around it, striking them like a harsh slap across the face. I think not. The words were said with such power that no one could move or speak. Lirael had to start the binding spell, but her throat was suddenly too dry for speech, her limbs too heavy to move. Desperately, she fought against the force that held her, drawing on the pain in her arm, the shock of seeing Nix's dying face, and the awful and total destruction all around. Her tongue moved then, and she found a hint of moisture in her mouth, even as Uranus swelled towards the ring of 7, its tongues of flame reaching out to wrap around the fools who sought to fight it. I stand for Sabriel against you, croaked Lirael, sketching a charter mark with the tip of her sword. The mark hung there, glowing, and the fiery tongues recoiled from it. A little. It was enough to free the others and begin the spell of binding. Sabriel drew a mark with her sword and said, I stand for Sereneth against you. Her voice was strong and confident, lending hope to all the others. "I stand for Belgayer against you," said Sam, his voice growing in strength and anger as he thought of Nick, his bloodless face looking up as he told him to make it right. Quickly he drew his charter mark, fingers almost flinging it in front of him. "I stand for Dyram against you," Elamir pronounced proudly, as if it were a challenge to a duel. Her mark was drawn deliberately, like a line in the sand. "As I did then, so do I now," said the disreputable dog. "I am Kibbeth, and I stand against you." Unlike the others, she didn't draw a charter mark, but her body rippled, brown dogskin giving way to a rainbow of marks that moved across her in strange patterns and conjunctions of shape and color. One of these marks drifted in front of her snout, and she blew on it, sending it out in front to hang in the air. "We stand as one for Masrael against you," intoned Senar and Yrael in unison. They drew their mark together, in bold strokes, with their clasped hands. "I am Torrigan, called Touchstone, and I stand for Rana against you," declared Touchstone, and his voice was that of a king. He drew his mark, and as it flared, he was the first to sound his bell. Then the Clare added Masrael's voice. The dog began a rhythmic bark. Elamir swung Dyram. Sam rang Belgayer, and Sabriel let Sereneth call deep and low over them all. Finally, Lirael swung Astariel, and her mournful tone joined the ring of sound and magic that surrounded Uranus. Normally, the weeper would throw all who heard her into death. Here, combined with the other 6 voices, her sound evoked a sorrow that could not be answered. Together, the bells and dogs sang a song that was more than sound and power. It was the song of the earth, the moon, the stars, the sea, and the sky, of life and death, and all that was and would be. It was the song of the charter, the song that had bound Uranus in the long ago, the song that sought to bind the destroyer once again. On and on the bells went, till they seemed to echo everywhere inside Lirael. She was saturated with their power, like a sponge that can take no more. She could feel it inside her and in the others, a welling up that filled them all, and then had to go rushing out. It did, flowing into the mark she'd drawn, which grew bright and spread sideways to become a strand of light that joined the next mark, and then the next, to form a glowing ring that closed around the globe of Uranus, a shining band in orbit around the dark and threatening sphere. Lirael spoke the rest of the binding spell, the words flying out of her on a flood tide of power. With the spell, the ring grew brighter still and began to tighten, forcing back the tongues of flame. It sent them writhing in retreat, back into the sphere of darkness that was Uranus. Lirael took a step forward, and all the 7 did the same, closing the human ring behind the magic one of light. Then they took another step, and another, as the spell ring tightened further, constricting the sphere itself. All around, the bells rang on in glory, and the dog's bark, a rhythm the bell ringers followed without conscious thought. A great feeling of triumph and relief began to swell in Lirael, tempered with the dread of the sword on her shoulder. Soon she would wield it and, all too soon, would walk once more to the 9th gate, never to return. Then the spell ring stopped. The bells faltered as the ringers halted behind it in mid-step. Lirael flinched, feeling a backlash of power, as if she'd suddenly walked into an unexpected wall. "No," Uranus said, its voice calm, devoid of all emotion. The spell ring shivered as Uranus spoke, and began to expand again, forced outwards by the growing sphere. The tongues of fire reappeared, more numerous than before. The bell still rang, but the ringers were forced to step back, their faces showing emotions that ranged from grim despair to doomed determination. The spell ring faded as it opened out, stretched too thin by the growing power of Uranus. "Too long did I linger in my metal tomb," spoke Uranus. "Too long have I borne the affront of living, crawling life. I am the destroyer, and all will be destroyed!" With the last word, the flames lashed out and gripped the spell ring with 1,000 tiny fingers of dark fire. They twisted and wrenched at it every way, hastening its destruction. Lirael saw it happen as if she were far away. All was lost now. There was nothing else to do or try. She had seen the beginning and seen Uranus bound. Then the seven had prevailed. Here they had failed. Lirael had known and accepted the certainty of her own death in this venture, and thought it a fair price for the defeat of Uranus and the saving of all she loved and knew. Now they would all merely be the first of a multitude to die, till Uranus brooded on a world of ash and cinders, kept company only by the dead. Then, in the midst of despair, Lirael heard Sam speak, and saw a flash of brilliant light flow up next to him, to form a tall shape of white fire that was only vaguely human. "Be free, Mogget!" shouted Sam, as he held a red collar high. "Choose well!" The shape of fire grew taller. It turned away from Sam towards Sabriel, and its head descended as if it might suddenly bite. Sabriel looked up at it stoically, and it hesitated. Then it flowed over to Lirael, and she felt the heat of it, and the shock of its own free magic that mixed with the lung-destroying impact of Uranus. "Please, Mogget," whispered Lirael, too soft to be heard by anyone at all. But the white shape did hear. It stopped, and turned inwards to face Uranus, changing from a pillar of fire to a more human shape, but one with skin as bright as a burning star. "I am Yrael," it said, casting a hand out to throw a line of silver fire into the breaking spell ring, its voice crackling with force. "I also stand against you." The spell ring tightened again, and everyone automatically stepped forward. This time, it didn't stop, but contracted again. As the ring tightened, the tongues of flame blew out, and the sphere grew darker. Then it began to glow with a silver sheen, the silver of the hemispheres that had bound Uranus for so long. Lirael stepped forward again, her eyes fixed on the shrinking sphere. Dimly, she was aware that Astariel still rang in her hand, as she was even more faintly aware that Yrael was singing now, singing over the bells and the barking, his voice weaving into the song. The sphere contracted still further, the silver spreading through it like mercury spilt in water, traveling in slow coils. When it became fully silver, Lirael knew she must strike, in the few moments when Uranus was completely bound. Bound not by the seven, but by the eight, she realized, for Mogget, Yrael, could be nothing else but the eighth bright shiner, who was himself bound by the seven in the long ago. Bells rang, Yrael sang, Kibith barked, Astariel mourned. The silver spread, and Lirael moved in closer, and raised the weapon Sam had made for her from blood and sword and the spirit of the seven in the panpipes. Uranus spoke then, in bitter, cutting tones. "Why, Yrael?" it said, as the last of the dark gave way to silver, and the shining sphere of metal sank slowly to the ground. "Why?" Yrael's answer seemed to travel across a great space, words trickling into Lirael's consciousness, as she raised her sword still higher, body arching back, preparing for the mighty blow that must cut through the entire sphere. "Life," said Yrael, who was more maggot than it ever knew. Fish and fowl, warm sun and shady trees, the field mice and the wheat under the cool light of the moon. Lirael didn't hear any more. She gathered up all her courage and struck. Sword met silver metal with a shriek that silenced everything, the blade cutting through in a blaze of blue-white sparks that fountained up into the ashen sky. Even as it cut, the sword melted, and red fire streaked up into Lirael's hand. She screamed as it hit, but hung on, putting all her weight and strength and fury into the blow. She could feel Uranus in the fire, feel it in the heat. It was seeking its last revenge on her, filling her with its destructive power, a power that would burn her into ash. Lirael screamed again as the flames engulfed the hilt, her hand now no more than a lump of pain, but still she held on to complete the breaking. The sword broke through, the sphere split asunder. Even knowing she would fail, Lirael tried to let go, but Uranus had her, its spirit kept momentarily whole by the thin bridge of her sword, the last remnants of the blade between the hemispheres, a bridge to her destruction. "Dog!" screamed Lirael instinctively, not knowing what she said, pain and fear overwhelming her intention to simply die. Again she tried to open her hand, but her fingers were welded to the metal, and Uranus was in her blood, spreading through to consume her in its final fire. Then the dog's teeth suddenly closed on Lirael's wrist. There was a new pain, but a clean one, sharp and sudden. Uranus was gone from her, as was the fire that threatened to destroy her. A moment later, Lirael realized that the dog had bitten off her hand. All that remained free of Uranus's vengeful power was directed at the disreputable dog. Red fire flowered about her as she spat out the hand, throwing it between the hemispheres, where it writhed and wriggled like a dreadful spider made from burned and blackened flesh. A great gout of flame erupted and engulfed the dog, sending Lirael stumbling back. Her eyebrows frizzled into nothing. Then, with a long, final scream of thwarted hope, the hemispheres hurtled apart. One narrowly missed Lirael, tumbling past her into the loch and the returning sea. The other flew up past Sabriel, to land behind her in a flurry of dust and ash. "Bound and broken," whispered Lirael, staring at her wrist in disbelief. She could still feel her hand, but there was nothing there save a cauterized stump and the burnt ends of her sleeve. She started to shake then, and the tears came, till she couldn't see for crying. There was only one thing she knew to do, so she did it, stumbling forward blindly, calling to the dog. "Here," called the dog softly, in answer to the call. She was lying on her side where the sphere had been, upon a bed of ash. Her tail wagged as she heard Lirael, but only the very tip of it, and she didn't get up. Lirael knelt by her side. The hound didn't seem hurt, but Lirael saw that her muzzle was now frosted white, and the skin was loose around her neck, as if she had suddenly become old. The dog raised her head very slowly as Lirael bent over her, and gave her a little lick on the face. "Well, that's done, mistress," she whispered, her head dropping back. "I have to leave you now." "No," sobbed Lirael. She hugged her with her handless arm, and buried her cheek against the dog's snout. "It was supposed to be me. I won't let you go. I love you, dog." "There'll be other dogs, and friends, and loves," whispered the dog. "You have found your family, your heritage. and you have earned a high place in the world. I love you too, but my time with you has passed. Goodbye, Lirael." Then she was gone, and Lirael was left bowed over a small soapstone statue of a dog. Behind her, she heard Yrael speak, and Sabriel, and the brief chime of Belgair, so strange after the massed song of all the bells. Its single voice, freeing Mogget from his millennia of servitude. But the sound was far away, in another place, another time. Sam found Lirael a moment later, curled up in the ash, the carving of the dog nestled in the crook of her handless arm. She held Astariel, the weeper, with her remaining hand, her fingers clenched tight around the clapper, so it could not sound. Epilogue. Nix stood in the river and watched with interest as the current tugged at his knees. He wanted to go with that current, to lie down and be swept away, taking his guilt and sorrow with him to wherever the river might go. But he couldn't move, because he was somehow fixed in place by a force that emanated from the patch of heat on his forehead, which was very strange when everything else was cold. After a time that could have been minutes or hours or even days, for there was no way to tell whether time meant anything at all in this place of constant gray light, Nick noticed there was a dog sitting next to him, a large brown and black dog with a serious expression. It looked kind of familiar. "You're the dog from my dream," said Nick. He bent down to scratch it on the head. "Only it wasn't a dream, was it? You had wings." "Yes," agreed the dog. "I'm the disreputable dog, Nicholas." "Pleased to meet you," said Nick formally. The dog offered a paw, and Nicholas shook it. "Do you happen to know where we are? I thought I died," replied the dog cheerily. "You did. This is death." "Ah," replied Nick. Once he might have wanted to argue about that. Now he had a different perspective, and other things to think about. The hemispheres?" "Uranus has been bound anew," announced the dog. "It is once again imprisoned in the hemispheres. In due course, they will be transported back to the old kingdom and buried deep beneath stone and spell." Relief crossed Nick's face and smoothed out the lines of worry around his eyes and mouth. He knelt down beside the dog to hug her, feeling the warmth of her skin in sharp contrast to the chill of the river. The bright collar around her neck was nice too. It gave him a warm feeling in his chest. "Sam and Lirael?" asked Nick hopefully, his head still bowed, close to the dog's ear. "They live," replied the dog, "though not without scathe. My mistress lost her hand. Prince Sameth will make her one, of course, of shining gold and clever magic. Lirael gold in hand, she'll be forever after. Remembrancer and Abhorsen, and much else besides. But there are other hurts which require different remedies. She is very young. Stand up, Nicholas." Nicholas stood. He wavered a little as the current tried to trip him and take him under. "I gave you a late baptism to preserve your spirit," said the dog. "You bear the charter mark on your forehead now, to balance the free magic that lingers in your blood and bone. You will find charter mark and free magic, both boon and burden, for they will take you far from Ancelstier, and the path you will walk will not be the one you have long thought to see ahead." "What do you mean?" asked Nick in bewilderment. He touched the mark on his forehead and blinked as it flared with sudden light. The dog's collar shone too, with many other bright marks that surrounded her head with a corona of golden light. "What do you mean, far from Ancestier? How can I go anywhere? I'm dead, aren't—" "I'm sending you back," said the dog gently, nudging Nix's leg with her snout, so he turned to face towards life. Then she barked, a single, sharp sound that was both a welcome and a farewell. "Is this allowed?" asked Nick, as he felt the current reluctantly release him, and he took the first step back. "No," said the dog. "But then I am the disreputable dog." Nick took another step, and he smiled as he felt the warmth of life, and the smile became a laugh that welcomed everything, even the pain that waited in his body. In life, his waking eyes looked up, and he saw the sun breaking through a low, dark cloud, and its warmth and light fell on a diamond-shaped patch of earth where he lay, safe amidst ruin and destruction. Nick sat up and saw soldiers approaching, picking their way across an ashen desert. Sutherlings followed the soldiers, their just scrubbed hats and scarves bright blue, the only color in the wasteland. A white cat suddenly appeared next to Nicholas's feet. He sniffed in disgust and said, "I might have known." Then he looked past Nick at something that wasn't there, and winked, before trotting off in a northerly direction. The cat was followed a little later by the weary footsteps of 6 people, who were supporting the 7th. Nick managed to stand and wave, and in the space of that tiny movement and its startled response, he had time to wonder what all the future held, and think that it would be much brighter than the past. The disreputable dog sat with her head cocked to one side for several minutes, her wise old eyes seeing much more than the river, her sharp ears hearing more than just the gurgle of the current. After a while, a small, enormously satisfied rumble sounded from deep in her chest. She got up, grew her legs longer to get her body out of the water, and shook herself dry. Then she wandered off, following a zigzag path along the border between life and death, her tail wagging so hard the tip of it beat the river into a froth behind her. And that's the end of Abhorsen. I'm sorry. I miss my dog so much. I want to show you a picture of my dog. This is Tulip. That's my disreputable dog. She passed away last year on July 5th. I miss her every day. And I didn't remember when I started this series, well, when I started this book, how this book ended. I mean, I remembered it, but, I don't know why. I just thought it would, oh, I'll just read this book. Like, no big deal. Like, my dog hadn't died recently. And every bit of it just, every time I edited these videos, I was just like, God, I wish she was here. So, this book is dedicated to my sweet Tulip. I miss her every day. And, oh, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I hope I read that okay. If I didn't, I'll read it again. But I don't want to. I want to be done. Thank you for listening to that reading. I totally understand if you're gonna, or if you've cut it off before this. I've been like, oh god, here she goes again. But, oh man, we're done. We're all finished. Oh my goodness gracious. Okay. Alright. I don't know. I'm done. We're done. That's it. I don't know how, but if you enjoyed that reading, I would appreciate it if you would like this video. Comment if you'd like. You don't have to. We're all finished. I hope you stick around this channel for my next adventures in life. I need to take about a week off, and then I'm gonna start posting again. I know if you've been watching these videos, I had said that I was gonna post a video tomorrow, and it was gonna be my big mini movie, and hopefully you've seen the video where I said that's not gonna happen. If not, yeah, things have changed, and I'm not willing to put out the video that I've gotten together so far. So I'm gonna do something a little different, but I need a week to get myself together and kind of decompress from this whole journey that I've just finished. I'm so sad, but I'm also really happy that I'm done. We've read all 3 of these books, and it was really hard, but I'm so glad to know now that I can post nearly every day for 4 months straight. I always wanted to be one of those people that just posts on YouTube all the time, no big deal. And I tried for many years to, think of stuff to put on here, and a lot of people, it seems so natural just the way they do it, and of course that's not the case at all. Everything is curated now. So I'm gonna do my very best to not make fake videos, and not that there's anything wrong with that. It's nice to escape every once in a while. It's nice to pretend, and I'll pretend here and there, but I want to just stay on here and say hello every once in a while and see how everyone's doing and share a little bit about my life. And I want to make videos about making my books and gardening. I have so much gardening to do this year. It's lovely outside right now. It's still cold, but the snow is nearly all melted. And when Tulip was here, this was some of the worst weather of the whole year because it's a big swamp outside. So every time she would go outside and go potty, she'd have to come in and get her feet wiped off because she'd be all muddy. But I'm going to spend the rest of the day trying to celebrate my sweet Tulip and not be so sad. And I hope if you have animals or a pet that you cherish them, because I had my Tulip for 12.5 years. She was the oldest white boxer that our vet had ever known. And I think she lived a really good life. So I love you, Tulip. I miss you. Anyways, I love you guys too. And I'll miss you until I come back next week. And then let's keep going. Let's stick with this and have some fun. Thank you so much for being here while I read these books. Thank you so much for all your comments and likes. And thank you to everyone who has subscribed to my channel. I've gotten a few more subscribers this past week. Hello and welcome. Sorry you have to watch me crying. I'm sure they've subscribed. They probably just started going through these books. I'm not sure. I won't assume. But just thank you for being here. When you get to this video, hopefully I'll have a lot more videos for you to watch. But I guess I will get to editing, try to stop crying, and try my best to enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. I love you so much. Take care. And until we see each other again, have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy your life. And as always, may your magic manifest. Bye.